Okay, so a lot of you have seen some aspects of the making of bingo in the user group presentation. I'm going to go over a little bit of that again, but in a little bit more detail. Basically, what I want to talk about is in two parts. The first part, which will be maybe about 40 minutes or so, I'm going to go over some of the concept, some of the ideas about the content of the piece, the way that I worked with the theater company, the Neo-Futurists, and the way that we came up with the dialogue and why we went forward with the idea from an artistic sort of standpoint. And then I'm going to, I want to show the piece then, give you a sort of in that context. And then I want to sort of break away, just sort of a clean break there, and go with a somewhat more technical presentation of some various aspects of how I set up the animation in Maya. So I've got Maya going here. I'm going to show some of the models, and I mean pretty much the actual models. I mean these aren't. One thing that I'm avoiding doing here is to try to do a demo here. I'm showing the actual models that were used in the piece. They're not stripped down. In some ways they look kind of ugly and kind of raw, but they're the real thing, and they'll give you a real idea of how we set up the animation and how we were able to make it work for us. Okay, a little bit of history. I went over this somewhat at the user group meeting, but again in a little bit more detail. The idea for bingo came around in the fall of '96, so nearly 2 years ago actually. At that point, Maya was in its pre-alpha state of existence. I mean, you had seen Maya, a lot of you had seen demonstrations of Maya. How many of you were at SIGGRAPH 95 in LA? Okay, so a lot of you would have seen demonstrations of Maya as early as that. But between 1995 and 1996, what we were dealing with in the development were still prototypes of Maya, which is a very, very different thing than integrating all this stuff into a package and having it all work. When we started talking about doing a production in 1996, as I say, Maya was in just about alpha at that point. And what we were really concerned about, more than anything else, was here we are, we're developing this version 1 product from scratch, completely from scratch in a totally unprecedented way. We had better damn well get this right with as good of an in-house and as sweeping an in-house production as we can come up with, because the demands by the time this was to be released was to be used for, in some productions of customers out here, sometimes hundreds of characters over feature-length type long format stuff. So we decided to do something a little bit stripped down from that, something only maybe 4 or 5 minutes long and with several characters. But that was the first bar that we wanted this thing to be raised over. And I've got to hand it to Alias Wavefront for having the vision to do that. I don't know of other software companies that would create something so ambitious and to put it through the sort of ambitious in-house testing that we subsequently put it through. So that was in September of '96 that we sort of came up with the idea of doing this production. So the question was, what would the content of such a production be? Well, we knew it would have to be character-based, and we'd want to give it some pretty complex characters. We decided to go to err more on the side of getting very realistic characters, but to try to put in some sort of cartoony element, and that's what you'll see. I'll talk about later with the character development. Okay. At the same time that we were talking about doing this test, or actually like about a month before that, I was in Chicago. That's my hometown. And a friend of mine asked me to join her for going to this theater company that performs every week in Chicago, and said that I really I shouldn't miss this. This was an ongoing thing. They do it. They have this sort of growing sort of cult reputation in Chicago. The group is called the Neo-Futurists. It's a group of about 10 playwrights, actors, people who are playwrights, actors, and theater directors. They had been around for about 10 years or so. I've actually started in 1987 or 1988. And they work in, and they do their theater in their own space. They call it the Neo-Futurarium. So I went to this place, went up this set of stairs, joined about 200 other people in this sort of large room, kind of looking around, talking with each other and wondering what was going to happen next. And then we were led into this theater space that's about as wide as this room, but only about from here maybe to the second or third row of chairs. So it's like this very compressed audience of people against this very wide and very shallow stage. And at 11:30, right then, one person came out and started one of those clock wall timers that you see in dark rooms, like photographic dark rooms that chug off 16 minutes, and said something to the effect of, okay, we're going to do 30 of these plays by the time that wall timer goes off. And so they immediately started with the first play. They recited it, and they said, go, and then they performed it. The first play that I saw was 30 seconds in length, right? They continued to keep doing these plays, like one after the other, just one off. The longest play that I saw there was about 5 minutes long. I'd never seen anything like this before. These guys were doing completely self-contained pieces of drama, some of which were like comedies, some of which were just absurd pieces, some of which were political satires, but all of them with just this incredible amount of energy and spark and with very fast-paced dialogue, because they hold it to themselves to get 30 plays done in that period of time. I was blown away by it, and something clicked at that point, which is, they're doing plays that are average 2 minutes long, some of which are 3 or 4 or 5 minutes long. And I like doing animated shorts that are like, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes long. What if we tried something new here, which is to take one of their plays and turn it into an animation? So at the same time, as I said, we were having these meetings at Alias Wavefront about doing this Maya production test. And at the same time, I said to the managers there, let's try this new thing with this theater company. And then I went back to them and said, let's try this thing with your plays. And they were totally into it. So what happened was there were about 3 or 4 visits that I took to Chicago where we saw like hundreds of their plays, a couple of hundred. They've actually performed in those 10 years' time. Like they do a lot of different plays every weekend. They've done 2,500 of these plays. And so we decided to look over like as many of them as we could. And as I said, we looked over about a couple of hundred. And we narrowed it down to a short list, and then we being myself and other animators in Alias Wavefront. And then from that, we chose one, and we talked with the theater company, we talked with the playwright, whose name is, of this particular play, his name is Greg Kotis, about using it. And we started fleshing out a little storyboard, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes. But first I'm going to show you the videotape of the play. This is a videotape of the performance that we took for reference for what would ultimately become Bingo. So let's run the VHS tape, please. And this is a play called Disregard This Play.
Everybody ready? Disregard this play! Go!
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Bingo.
Excuse me?
Hi, Bingo.
Bingo?
Bingo. Bingo the clown.
I'm not.
Hi, Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
But I'm not.
Bingo. Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
But I'm not.
Hi, Bingo.
Music, please!
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Bingo.
I'm not Bingo.
He's coming, you know,
He's coming?
to check on your progress.
Who's coming? Who's coming? Bingo?
You're Bingo! Bingo! Bingo the Clowno!
Bingo!
Here he comes.
Was that him?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Bingo.
I'm not Bingo.
Oh, my. He's coming again.
Oh my.
Music, please! Please stop the music!
Hi.
Hi, Bingo.
I'm not Bingo.
Will you looking at my money?
No,
Good. Would you like to?
no. You know, I really don't. Yes. Yes, I would. I really would. I really, really would. I'd like to look at your money. Can I look at your money?
Good. You're a good little Bingo, aren't
No. I don't know. I don't think so. Oh my.
Music, please!
Maybe I am Bingo.
Bingo?
Yes, Bingo.
Bingo. Bingo the clown.
Yes, Bingo. Bingo the Clowno. Bingo, Bingo the Clown. Maybe I am Bingo. I am Bingo. I'm Bingo. Bingo the Clowno. Bingo, Bingo the Clown. That's me. That's me. That's me. That's me. Bingo. That's me.
Thank you. Next.
Okay, stop the tape right there for a sec. Great. So that's an example of what you might call a dark, absurd comedy. I know, like a lot of people laugh when you see that kind of thing in a theater. When that guy is somersaulting. His name is Phil Rittarelli, the clown, somersaulting across. You get something that's on a very human scale. That is on that very shallow theater stage. They're all dressed in street clothes, and what you get is this, what I consider to be very powerful, allegorical, dark comedy that comes as a result. So the question for me was, what would happen if we took that performance with all of the rawness and all of the live aspects, the performance aspects of that performance, the audio portion of it? What if we took that, captured it while they were performing the play, and then created our own phantasmagoric computer-generated imagery that Alias Wavefront is so good at doing, and put that, make that the visual aspect of it. It's like taking something that was intended, at its heart, is theater, intended for theater, and wrapping something entirely new around it, in this case, animation. I thought it'd be an interesting thing to try. The closest thing I'd ever seen to that, maybe some of you have some other examples, is have any of you seen Creature Comforts by Nick Park? Okay, a few of you have. In Creature Comforts, what the premise was there was that the animator, Nick Park, would interview people on the street talking about their lives, right? And then he would take the content of that interview and he would create his own animation around it. So what the people were saying was they were talking about stuff that was not at all intended to be animated, and he would create this sort of allegorical piece out of it with these zoo animals who are in cages talking about their existence in a zoo. And it's, you know, really powerful and somewhat disturbing piece, even though it's also quite funny. So I wanted to try, you know, something along those lines, except now we're dealing with theater. So that performance that you saw there was in November of 1996, you know, about a year and a half ago. And the next day, we brought all of those actors onto a soundstage in downtown Chicago, a place called Post Effects. And we wired them up with, you know, lavalier microphones like this one. And had those microphones more or less tethered to a DA88 recorder. So we're recording digital sound here for the dialogue. If we can run that, the VHS again, just from where it was, you'll see a little bit of that.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Bingo.
Excuse me?
Hi, Bingo.
Bingo?
Bingo. Bingo the clown.
I'm not Bingo.
Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
But I'm not.
Bingo. Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
But I'm not.
Hi, Bingo!
Music, please!
Okay, stop the tape, please. Thanks. Okay, so again, what we're getting is they're in a soundstage, but one thing that they're not doing is they're not reciting lines, you know, with headphones on in a sound booth. They're actually, you know, acting out the play, right? And the vocal performance that you get is the play being performed. So that's one important distinction to make about, you know, the making of the beginning of the content of Bingo. Okay, once we had that in place, then it was a matter of, you know, starting the production. And you know, one of the things that I've emphasized in the past is that the creation of Bingo was always in lockstep with the creation of Maya, with the development of it. Maya's development for the SGI happened until February of this year, right? And then it was released in IRIX form and continued on as it was being finished up, refined in its NT version, which then went out just last month. And so we were testing all those aspects of the development of both the IRIX and the NT version as this thing was evolving from the fall of 1996. So as I said, there in the fall of 1996, we were just starting the alpha sort of program with Maya. And at that point, as I said, the tools were either only in prototype form or they were just plain non-existent. So, you know, I would say the first part of the production was a very gradual process, and this is sort of where we deviate from, you know, your typical approach in a production environment. One of the things that we wanted to do was to get scenes out the door to test stuff as quickly as possible. You know, typically you might, when you're doing a short format, you know, say several minutes long type format piece, is that you'll take care of the modeling aspects of the production, and then you'll take care of the animation setup, and then you will get all the characters textured and shaded, and then only then do you start really going through the, you know, various pencil tests and various degrees of refinement, and then you finally build the animation. That's not what we did. We took very much on a scene-by-scene approach. Like we would develop the characters that you would see in one, you know, the first scene. You only see two of them. Get them up, get their, get them wired up, get the shading and texturing done, so that we could immediately do, as quickly as possible, do that first shot before moving on and creating other characters. And it was also in this way that we could test Maya in various stages of its development, and so that we could test how it integrates with existing products, particularly Power Animator. Just want to know, how many of you are coming to Maya from Power Animator, migrating from Power Animator? Okay, so it looks like most of you. Okay. That's what we were using to do our modeling, particularly of the first 3 characters. So I'm going to just bring you through sort of the development process as it by showing you the characters and sort of give you an idea of how they fit into the sort of the chronology going from beginning to end of the Maya development process. Let's go to the SGI. Great. Okay. So as I said, I don't know if I said this, there are 5 characters in Bingo. Actually, I want to back up a little bit and show you, before we get to that, I want to show you just the storyboard to give you a sense of how we were thinking of deviating from the play in terms of the visual computer graphic imagery. Okay, so there's Dave sitting in scene 1, shot 1 of the storyboard, sitting in his chair with a spotlight on him, similar to what you saw in the play. So here we are with the spotlight getting bigger and this clown number 1 walking in. We call him Pinhead, and you'll see in a second why we call him that. He comes up to Dave and he says, "Hi." Dave says, "Hi." "Hi, Bingo." "Excuse me." "Hi, Bingo." "Bingo." "Bingo." Bingo the clown. So far everything is like the play, right? Dave says, "But I'm not." Here's where we start to deviate. Clown's head, Pinhead's head, gets bigger and more sort of grotesque looking. It's about 2 or 3 feet high. Dave sort of reacts like, well, while clown number 1, Pinhead says, "Bingo, Bingo the clowno." Dave says, "But I'm not." And the next one, we get this through cuts, we're getting more and more grotesque deformations with the Pinhead character. So he shouts out, "Bingo, Bingo, Bingo the clowno," but I'm not. And then finally he's at this huge, 12-foot, 13-foot high face saying, "Hi, Bingo," right? So again, we're using the dialogue and then we're putting this new imagery over it. So get that out of there. Now I'm going to show you what I was about to show you, the evolution of the characters right here. Dave was modeled, or actually first sketched out to look very similar to the character who actually sits on stage. He's wearing shorts and street clothes, and he's basically the most normal of all of the characters in the animation. Okay, so here this is, as I said, the early stages not only of Maya but of developing Dave. We developed most of it in Power Animator. A few things here were developed in Maya, particularly the shoes. His shoes were done in Maya. All the rest of the organic modeling was done in Power Animator. Well, it looks a little crude here. I mentioned at the user group meeting that he looks more like a Mahatma Gandhi than any normal street kind of character. But when we start texturing him, we start to get some more believability in the character. So here we have skin texture. This was developed by Daniel Hornick, who was an employee of Alias Wavefront at the time. Doug Law and some other people contributed to the modeling of this character. And it's starting to look, as I say, a little bit more believable. If you look at the close-up here. This is, by the time we modeled this portion here that you see, we're up to about beta 3 in Maya. And this is at the point where we're starting to integrate the ray cast part of the renderer with the ray traced part of the renderer. And this is a rendering that you would not be able to do in Power Animator. You're seeing, soft shadows here. That's the depth map shadows you get with ray casting. But you're starting to get some really cool highlights here, which you could only get with ray tracing. So we've got both of those things going on, but we're still missing things like hair, all right? Now, the way that we did hair, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about this later, is we modeled the hair geometrically with patches, spline patches for the most part, in some cases polygons, and then we applied a shader. We'll get to showing that also a little later. You start to see hair on the the eyelashes and the eyebrows here, and you see wisps of it off to the side here. These are, what you're seeing here are probably about 5 or 6 of these little wispy kind of patches bent to look like little feathers. And then onto these little feathers we're texturing these little strands. The strands are the result of the use of this anisotropic shader. At this point, we are now testing the renderer for its API compatibility, and one of the sort of gods at Alias Wavefront, Duncan Brinsmead, a few of you know him, developed this shader and started just wailing on this geometry, texturing it using this sort of painted textury sort of thing. He would just paint onto a UV texture, and this would define the directionality of the specular highlight. What I mean by that is that an anisotropic shader, if you take a pool ball like you see in the swath in the renderer, and you have a normal shader, you get a sphere, you get a round reflection, a round highlight. With an anisotropic shader, that highlight's not round, even though the geometry is round. It's oblong in some direction, right? That's what makes it anisotropic. So what Duncan did here was to make this oblong highlight that makes things look long and skinny, like strands of hair. And you're starting to get that effect shown there. I'll show you in one of the later characters how that was even further refined. Next character that was developed was Pinhead. And this was done about the same time because we needed both of those characters to act out scene one as quickly as possible. So here's the first character sketch. This was developed by Mike Kitchen at Alias Wavefront using Studio Paint. Here's the deformed version of Pinhead as he gets really, really big. And we keep more or less the proportions the same in his body, but then his hands and his feet and his arms get to this grotesquely large size. So here we have this very crude animatic. We're just testing out some of the animation here. This is about beta 2, about February of 1997, that we're starting to check out the inverse kinematics. But more importantly, we're checking out the modeling here, and that's what we're seeing here. Now some of this stuff is being modeled. A little bit more of this is being modeled in Maya than was with Dave. The pants were modeled in Maya. So the hands now, for the first time, we're modeling this organic looking the skin stuff in Maya. So the face, however, and the shirt and the shoes are still modeled in Power Animator, okay? So this is where he looked in around beta 3, around March or April of last year, and this is how he looked and looks now in the production. So now we've got all these things working together. This is about beta 6, about October last year. So now we're seeing this cool facial skin texture. We're seeing facial expressions because we've got blend shape working with the modeling. We have deformations in the hand, and we have inverse kinematics working for the arm. This is with Maya being very close to production ready, okay? So moving on, this is a head view. A lot of you have seen this. This was on, I think, the cover of 3D Design a couple of, about 4 months ago. This was actually a still from a movie file. Some of you have seen the movie file. I'm going to show it here again anyway. This was kind of a turning point for the production right here. Can you see that okay? Good. Now, this may or may not have audio. We'll see. If not, I'll sort of lip sync along. He's saying...
Hi, Bingo.
Oh, good. He's talking.
Bingo?
Bingo. Bingo the clown.
I'm not Bingo.
Hi, Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
But I'm not.
Bingo. Bingo. Bingo the clowno. Hi, Bingo!
Okay. Well, a lot of people were kind of impressed by that. I was blown away by it. I thought, oh my God, this software is working pretty well now. You know, that was... Yeah, I was very happy to see that. And I mean, there you're seeing sort of what a production test is all about. We've got, inverse kinematics, we have spline IK, we have the facial deformations, we have the texturing, we have the rendering. All this stuff is now, having to work together after having reduced it to these various parts and having these various things working separately. So that's where we were in October of last year. After October, we started developing these new characters. Harlequin, for example, came out, we started modeling her in the summer. Most of her was modeled in Power Animator. The hair is modeled in Maya and textured in Maya. Oh, good, you can see that fairly well. Nice highlights there with that anisotropic shader. A very economical shader for doing stuff like here, as opposed to having to do it with, you know, transparency maps and bump maps and stuff, which just take forever to render, and you've got tons of anti-aliasing issues to deal with. This is a lot more economical. So I'm mentioning this now. I mean, we did this as a custom shader for Maya 1.0. In Maya 1.5, my understanding is that we will be releasing an anisotropic shader for doing this kind of stuff. So that's why one reason why I'm sort of emphasizing it here. Okay, so that's Harlequin. Balloon Girl. Okay, here's where we really deviated from the script. In the play, it's a full-grown adult walking up to Dave and popping bubble wrap in his face. Okay, popping it like this. Now Dave is seated, right? He's seated in a little chair, and so he's about this high, right? And this woman's walking up and popping it like right in his ear. That's the important part of the drama there, is that it's literally in his face. We wanted to use balloons instead of bubble wrap there. But if a full-grown person were to walk up to Dave with balloons, you know, the balloons would be up here and Dave would be down here. So we decided to solve that problem by making this little girl. She's about 5 or 6 years old. But even for that age, she's small for her age. She's about 2.5, 3 feet tall, and she has some very exaggerated features that are exaggerated to make her look quite cute. This is the sketch that we did, and you know, she has, you know, abnormally big eyes and a big, huge forehead, and somewhat more exaggerated and somewhat more cartoony features. So we took that sketch, we loaded it into Maya, and now for the first time we're really modeling facial features in Maya, okay? And we modeled the balloon girl as well as the other characters, and I'll get to this in more detail later, as a number of patches that we then used, that we then stitched together and made into one continuous surface. And then subsequently we did Studio Paint, you know, to texture this. As far as the workflow goes, many of you know that, you know, you have to go back to a PA type model in order to bring it into Studio Paint. That's what we did here, or at least in the early part of Maya. That's what we had to do. You know, wire out into Studio Paint, do the texture of the painting, and then back in as a wire file that we would then convert back into a Maya scene file geometry. So that's what we had there. This is before the anisotropic shader was applied, again by our esteemed Duncan. And this is what it looked like. This is the full rendering afterwards, and this is what is on the cover of CGW this month. So here, I'll get to the, again, more detail a little bit later about the details of the geometry of the hair, but there are several, like something like about 10 or 15 patches that are sort of superposed on top of each other to get that effect. And once again, there's a really cool integration of ray casting and ray tracing. You get the nice Z-depth kind of shadows right there, and yet you get also some totally cool highlights in the meniscus of the eye, the sort of watery area on the lid, the tear duct, and on the iris, the highlight that you can see here from the ray tracing. Also a reflection here on the balloon up there. Okay, so now we're getting to the point, this is now later on in the animation. The last character to come out is the money guy. So by this point, we have started, in fact, we have completely rendered 2 of the scenes of Bingo. This is like now just when Maya has gone golden. That is, it's out in the field at this point. But now we have this test of NT as well. So Money Guy is not only the first character in this production to be modeled completely in Maya, but also more or less completely modeled in NT. And we had some of you were at the user group meeting last year in 1997 might remember for the student competition, the winner for that student competition did this sort of Star Wars type character, this bipedal character with a long tail. We snatched him up. He's working in quality assurance doing modeling. His name is Gary Van Oyman Klucke, and he took on modeling this character in NT. Okay, first he started with a skeleton that I created to give the proportions of this character. This is our one real non-human character here. He's got 17 arms. He's got 5 fingers on each arm. And so he's got this kind of tree-like appearance to him. There's here you see that, the trunk and the arms coming out of it. So here, Gary's modeled a simple trunk, starting to get a little bit more complex with the arms, okay? He then uses these free-form fillets in order to connect the arms to the trunk, right? And now you see those with all 17 arms modeled. And now he's also modeled the face with the same topology, the same several patch sort of method that we've used for the other faces. And finally on that we put these wads of money. So the money itself is done with soft body dynamics. We have what we call hard money, which is just the geometry which is parented to each of the fingers, and then we have what we call soft money, which follows the hard money being the goal, and flops around like paper. So once we had that in place, then Gary finished up texturing what he had there, putting textures on the money slapped all over the trunk and his arms. By the way, that's both Canadian and U.S. Currency there. And lots of it too. Okay, so this is the final rendering of the money guy right there. Some humongous texture files that we used there, but he was actually a fairly economical character to render, a really fun character to deal with. Okay, actually I want to say one other thing about it. First of all, Jason Schleifer, one of the real crackerjack people here, did the deformation setup for the money guy. And we had an animator come in from Windlight Studios. Her name's Joan Stavely. I don't know if any of you ever heard of Joan Stavely. She's had 2 pieces in electronic theaters in the past, some really humongous pieces. One is called Wanting for Bridge, and the other is called Broken Heart. She's been at Windlight Studios for the last 4 years, and she came on board to work on this without knowing Maya at all. Came on in late April. This is when now we're at the point where, the IRIX version's been out the door for a couple of months. We're working with NT more or less completely now. Joan came in, and in a period of 2 weeks, actually 2 weeks less a day, completely animated the money guy throughout a minute of animation, and did what I consider to be quite a phenomenal job of that. Okay, so that's all of the 5 characters, and it gives you a sense of how Maya was developing along with how this animation was developing, particularly the modeling aspect of it. I'll show some other aspects of how the production sort of came around. Here's an example of an animatic. We had animatics of various degrees of complexity. We'd have some with no facial animation, ranging to complete deformed, high resolution characters being lit with the actual room lighting, being done in hardware shaded mode, and then output. So here's one of the first ones that we did.
Hi, Bingo. Excuse me? Hi, Bingo.
Bingo?
Bingo. Bingo the clown.
I'm not Bingo.
Hi, Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
But I'm not.
Bingo. Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
I'm not.
Hi, Bingo!
Okay. So the last thing, the last sort of animatic type thing that I want to show here is the development of some dynamics, just an example of some soft body dynamics. So this is the dress on the little girl, and this shows a very intermittent result that we had from applying a sort of soft body dynamic particle stuff to it. I will mention that this is not, a lot of you may have heard that Maya is going to be releasing a cloth utility later on this year. And I mean, what I've seen of it is absolutely phenomenal. We were not using that on this at all. It just wasn't there. This is back in February this year. This is simply the core soft body dynamic stuff working here. And I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. But I tell you, I can't wait to use that cloth stuff. Okay, just some cursory aspects of, actually, no, I think at this point I would like to show you the animation bingo.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Bingo.
Excuse me?
Hi, Bingo.
Bingo?
Bingo. Bingo the clown.
I'm not Bingo,
Hi, Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
but I'm not.
Bingo. Bingo. Bingo the clowno.
But I'm not.
Hi, Bingo!
Music, please! Hi.
Hi,
Hi, Bingo.
but I'm not Bingo.
He's coming, you know,
He's coming?
to check on your progress.
Who's coming? Who's coming? Bingo?
You're Bingo! Bingo! Bingo the clowno!
But
Here he comes. Hi.
hi,
Hi, Bingo.
but I'm not Bingo.
Music, please!
Hi. Hi. Hi, Bingo. But I'm not Bingo.
Are you looking at my money?
No! Good. Would you like to? No! I don't know. You know, I really don't. Yes. Yes, actually, I would. I would like to look at your money. I really would. I really, really would. Can I look at your money? Good. You're a good little Bingo. Aren't you? No! I don't know. I don't think so. Oh, my.
Music, please!
Maybe I am Bingo.
Bingo?
Yes, Bingo.
Bingo. Bingo the clown?
Bingo the clown. Bingo! Bingo the clowno! I am Bingo! I'm Bingo! Bingo the clowno! Bingo! Bingo the clown! I'm Bingo! That's me! That's me!
Thank you. Next.
Some of the technical and sundry aspects of building the characters. I'll start with some modeling aspects and then move on to animation setup and animation and perhaps a little bit of rendering here. Okay, what we're looking at here, we'll start with facial modeling. By the way, I'm going to be, we'll be making a video of this and subsequent, sort of help type handouts. Not here at SIGGRAPH, but subsequently later on. I'd like to have these online. In any event, the videotape I expect will be available as well. So I just want to give you a flavor, if you will, of some of the approaches that we took to modeling and animating and rendering the characters. So I'm going to start with some facial modeling here. this is the little girl character. This is pretty much the model that we used. And what you see here is what appears to be a continuous, more or less seamless model, but not really. There are actually some seams in there. But the important thing is what it looks like in its exploded view, which I'll show here. That's just one half of the face, sort of exploded out. And what you're seeing there are 10 surfaces that comprise the face in the order that we modeled them. Start with the nose, the bridge of the nose, the top of the eye, the skin around the eye, including the eyelid, the lower eyelid, the cheek, the mouth area, the jowl, the chin, the forehead, and the brow. It's 10 surfaces. Okay. Why did we model it that way? We have, if I put on shaded mode here, hold on, there we go. Okay. If one of the things that we wanted to try here was to keep the sort of the form of the NURB surfaces consistent with what they're supposed to do. Like around the eye, the form should follow the form of the eyelid or the lines in the eyelid. So these are fairly clear and obvious things in modeling, but what it was very difficult to do, particularly with NURBS, as opposed to polygons where you can break up a surface into very arbitrary topology, is to make one or very few surfaces conform to all of the sort of lines of force that you find in a face. So it's in that case much easier to break it up into all these different components. The hard part is, of course, that you can have tears and seams, like you see obviously tears right here because I've blown the face up. So the way to fix that, of course, is to use stitching. Okay. I want to get a sense, how many of you out there have used Stitch or played around with it? Yeah, as I guessed, not very many people. Stitch is one of these sort of tools that we have, I guess it's been underexposed as far as the power that it has. And as far as the workflow, it's a somewhat low-level workflow right now in Maya 1.0. I'll say that in future releases, we're going to be dealing with making this thing really easy to use. What you might guess would be the easiest way to use Stitch would be to take all these surfaces like that and just say stitch them together and boom, they come together. That sort of global solution is what developers at Maya are hard at work at as we speak right now. Until that's come around, though, I want to show you the approach that we took. It is a somewhat lower level approach. You're stitching one surface at a time. But the result, as far as these faces were concerned, worked very, very well. I'm very pleased with how I didn't have to think about the fact that these surfaces were stitched together once that was done. That was a really good part of the production, part of the modeling. As far as stitching goes, of those of you who raise your hands, how many have heard of the idea of like a master edge and a slave edge? Has that been explained? Okay, very few of you. Okay, I'm going to try to teach you a little bit about that idea there, something that perhaps wasn't covered that thoroughly in the documentation or the tutorial. When you stitch two surfaces together, you pick one surface edge first, and then you pick the second surface edge, right? The first surface that you pick is the master. The second is the slave, okay? The difference is that the master surface doesn't move after you stitch it. It's the slave that moves to accommodate the master. So, for example, here I'll stitch two surfaces together, and I will pick this edge first, right? You see that? I will pick this edge second, and notice that when I do that, hold on a second. Let's try that again. In fact, I'm going to go to wireframe to make it hopefully a little, that's a little dark. We'll try it again. Hold on. Stitch, master, slave, and you notice that the slave surface goes to meet the master surface and will stay like that henceforth. So now when I exit the tool and pick this surface and move it, notice that the master surface stays intact, and it's the slave surface that sort of morphs its way in order to accommodate the master surface. Okay, I want to show you the settings that I have Stitch add. I believe these are the default settings, but I'll show you them anyway. Stitch tool, options, or the toolbox here. So we're going for position and tangent continuity here. So both of those things are on, okay? Positional continuity keeps the surface from tearing apart. Tangential continuity keeps the surface from creasing, okay? So all the checked boxes are on. This is if we were to do blends on points or edges. Sample count basically says how many iterations it's going to go through. One of the things that should happen in Maya 2.0 is that this will be automatically set. Now, what it will do is it will tell you the recommended number, and you have to set it manually. I have it set at 80, and for all practical purposes, I never set it again after that. So that worked quite well. So those are the tool defaults. Blend option during creation, position, tangent, all these are on. Again, 80 for samples along edge. Cascade. How many of you know what cascade is? Okay, very few. It's hard to explain cascade. Just have it on all the time, okay? Yeah, what it means is that, okay, I'll try to explain it. Suppose you have surface 1, surface 2, surface 3, surface 4, and you want to stitch them all together, right? Surface 1, you stitch to surface 2 splorts over to surface 1 in order to meet it, right? You want to have cascading on because then when you take surface 2 and merge it with surface 3 or stitch it to surface 3, you want that already modified surface to splort onto this surface here. If cascade's off, it takes the unmodified, unstitched version of that surface, which is upstream, and it morphs it into this new surface here. Sometimes you might want that. Usually you don't, and that's why cascade should stay on. Okay, so those are the defaults for stitching. Now, I'm going to show you the order in which I did it, and you'll see some sort of frightening things here as far as the way that this looks, and then ways that you manipulate a stitch surface in order to make it look right. Okay. One thing that I'm going to show here is an example of a T-junction. Okay, a T-junction is where you've got one large surface down here, say, and then two or more smaller surface here, right? And suppose you want to take this first surface and stitch it to just this portion of the large surface, right? And then you want to take this surface here and stitch it to just this portion of the large surface. That's a T-junction, okay? That's what you have here. You have this long, large edge right here for the eye skin. And then you have this little short section here, and you want to just stitch that onto a small portion of that large surface. So we'll start the stitching process here by selecting this, hold on, okay, as the master surface, and this as the slave surface, and that's the frightening thing that you see there. But in addition to this frightening scene, you have these two little dots here, which are manipulators, and manipulators are very nice to have because they can allow you to do things like this, which is to take that small surface and to slide it, or to scale it along that larger surface. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm scaling it from all the way. It's, by default, surfaces are, they are put edge to edge, and that's what you saw there. And now I'm taking it and I'm giving it a little better fit. Now, what I want to do, because the parameterization of these two surfaces happen to be uniform, the thing that I want to do, as you might guess, is to make the isoparms just line up one for one along the surface. I don't know if you can see that too well. If you squint, you can see the green isoparms there. Can you see the isoparms all right? Okay. One thing that you want to do then is to make an exact match. You want to put this thing exactly onto an isoparm. So you do a snap to point in order to do this, right? V key, hotkey, is snap to point, right? If I do that, then as I move that manipulator, it goes nicely chunk, chunk, chunk between these various isoparms, and there's the one where it should be, where all the isoparms land on top of each other, and then you complete the tool, and it's stitched right there. Okay, I'll do a couple of more of these to give you, just the sense of how this thing flows. So there's master surface, slave surface. They stitch together, and once again, it looks pretty ugly, but it looks a little better when I take that surface and bring it to that point right there, and then complete the tool, and that's stitched together. Okay, move down here to this surface. Again, I'm pressing Y for latest tool that was used. Nice little interface there. Okay. One of the little bugs here, and that's why I keep doing this over and over again, is when you're in a shaded mode like this, it doesn't know exactly whether to pick the vertical isoparms or the horizontal isoparms. If that ever happens, you just go to wireframe mode like that, then it's easy to pick surface A and then surface B, the slave surface, and they come together like that, okay? So there's that surface stitched together. So now I'm going to show you in a little bit more of a condensed version here how I stitched together the entire face, but to show you that I'm not going to do that all here, I'm going to instead show you, hold on a second here. Bear with me for a second. Okay, no, there it is right there. Fine. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm showing you that exploded view of the face, and I'm doing a little color coding here. Every time you see a yellow surface, that means I'm using it as the master. Every time you see a blue surface, that's a slave, right? So there, master-slave surface, and exactly what I showed you before, the eye skin for the eyelid and then the bridge of the nose, stitched that together. And what I got when I did that was this, right? So then again, you saw, the eye is the master, the eye skin is the master, the brow as the slave, and once again, they come together like that. Then I took the surfaces that you saw there, the eye is the master, the skin is, the cheek is the slave, put them together, and then I stitched the two parts of the eye together, master, slave, on the left and then on the right, okay? Then I stitched, let's see what I do there. I stitched the jowl as the master surface and the brow as the slave, the jowl the master, because as you see, it's got a long edge. It's another T-junction here, right? Okay, so stitch those together, and then go to the forehead, stitch those together, move over, stitch the forehead and the brow together, bridge of the nose to the brow together. Now we're moving to the middle of the face. We stitch the nose with as the slave surface, go stitch the cheek as the slave, and so on. Now we move to the mouth. The mouth is this big, long orbital edge, so that's going to be the master surface, right? So get the nose attached to it, then the cheek, then the chin, right? Then we take the jowl, which has been the master surface before, and we make that the master for getting the chin attached to it. Okay, so that's all of these surfaces attached together. Now we still have a problem. You see that there are these holes in the face. You get holes every time that you have corners, surface corners come together, and you stitch this to this, and then say this to this, this to this, and this to this. You haven't given enough information there as to what to do with the corners. So we have this nice utility called stitch surface points. I'll show that really briefly right here. Stitch surface points is where you can, say, select edit points. I have a nice little hotkey for selecting edit points. So I select, say, 3 of them here, and then I go to this tool, stitch surface points, edit surface, stitch surface points. And boy, they don't come together. Hold on. I'll just pick 2 of them. And once again, stitch surface points. And they come together like so. Okay, so that's how you fill in those little holes there. So the next thing we do that, we take those 2 points and stitch them together. Take these 2 points down here and stitch them together, and finally up here on the forehead, stitch them together. Okay, so that takes care of 1/2 of the face. In connecting the 2 halves of the face, we just go down the line here. We take this edge and we stitch it to the other edge of the right side of the face, all the way down to the chin and to the neck. Okay, so that covers stitch to some degree there. I hope to some. Get to that later. I hope to some degree that makes you want to go out and try to use it, because it is a pretty powerful tool. Yeah?
Did you do each piece individually when you modeled the head? How did you use the isoform to line up so perfectly?
Basically, that was a couple of things, and I'll show you one aspect of modeling in a couple of seconds. One was pulling CVs, right? And one was using lattices. Lattices were, for me, just a totally indispensable modeling tool. I'll show you an example of that.
Did you model each piece individually?
Yes. I'm going to get rid of my stitched surfaces. Okay, so here's our still exploded view. I'll go ahead and make that unexploded right there. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just show some CVs. So here I'm just showing the CVs on that one part of the face, okay? I might show it on two parts of the face. So I have CVs showing for two surfaces together. Now, how I ended up doing global modeling of different parts of the face, like when I was doing target expressions for the face, which I'll get to a little later when we get to facial animation, is I would pick these, a bunch of these CVs, right, and then put a lattice on it, deformation lattice, right? So I'd get this nice, fairly low resolution lattice, at which point I'll hide the CVs and bring out the lattice points. Okay, so there are the lattice points. I have a nice hotkey for choosing a lattice point. So now I have this kind of global modeling control where I can pick up various parts of the face, like right here, a large global portion of the forehead and raise it up. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen lots of demos of this kind of thing where you're using lattices as a modeling tool. We were using this kind of stuff all the time. Like I say, we modeled each of these different patches separately, got them, started them off, just as square patches as you get them off of the primitives portion of the menu. Have this nice square. You start using a lattice like this to sort of mold it into approximate shape. Like we know, I'll go back to that showcase presentation for a second, and I want to go back a few pages. Okay, it says say right here. In this sketch here, what we did, you don't see it on the sketch, but what we did was we just drew in where we wanted each of those patches to have their edges, right? And then it was a very easy matter of loading that sketch into Maya and then just getting the front view to match and then getting the side view to match. And then once it's sort of close, then we start doing more and more refinement and, just eventually you get the face to the level of detail that you want. Does that answer what you're asking?
Well, I said the lining up of the isoforms too there. Did you have a set amount of UV coordinates?
One thing that we did was all of the facial modeling was done with uniform patches. Okay, for our purposes, that simplified a lot of things, and in other parts of the geometry, we use non-uniform patches a lot because we don't want stretching of textures, that kind of thing. But in the face, we could get away with having uniform patches a lot because, let's look here for a second. With very few exceptions, the isoparms are you don't see many cases where you have them really, really close together and then really, really far apart and then really, really close together. One thing that we're trying to do here is to keep more or less square spans, all right, like UV portions, cells of the patch. We don't have that in some areas like right here. But one thing that we do have with this eye skin, even though they're long and skinny patches, they're consistent, right? They're long and skinny here as they are here, and they continue to be long and skinny in more or less the same way all the way across, with a little bit of exceptions, and there are some problems with texturing with that. But again, having these uniform really simplified things a lot as far as getting the isoparms to line up and to have seamlessness between the faces. One thing that we were doing was we were being very conservative with stitching, right? We were, what I found later on was that we could do things like have non-uniform surfaces, and it would be just fine. But we wanted to get it right. I should move on here. We still have a lot to cover here. I want to move over to the hand now. Okay, take that out of there. I'm going to bring in this thing. Okay, so I've got, how are we doing on time here? Okay, we're fine. Show two hands here. I'm bringing up the texturing on them. Okay, the hand on the top was modeled in Power Animator, and the hand on the bottom was modeled in Maya. The hand on the top, which is modeled in Power Animator, is the hand how many of you saw the CGW article? I wrote an article like a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, on how to model hands, right? Okay, good. The way that did this in Maya was different than the way that I did in Power Animator, and I'll show you some of the differences here. Okay, this is more or less as it looked in the productions I was doing, and this is an exploded view of both of those hands. Okay, the hand on the top, the Power Animator hand from 1994 or whatever, has got this one surface, which is this palm, right? And it's got all these 5 objects, which are the fingers. Okay, I'll show the topology of that palm. Let me bring in the wireframe representation here, like that. Okay, the palm was modeled, some of you people on the list server who were talking about this, referred to this as kind of a sock technique, where you took this one surface, in this case, the Power Animator version of that palm, started off as just a planar surface like that, right? It's just a primitive, more or less, which was then sort of molded into this palm shape, right? So there were some cool things about that as far as like getting the blend surfaces to line up to the fingers here and stuff like that. But here's where you really had some problems. Remember what I was saying about consistency, you want square isoparms, that kind of thing. Well, here you see these long, skinny isoparms, and here you see them really fat and wide apart. And we had always had problems with texturing issues with that. And furthermore, aside from that, you have these kind of like very acute angles right here and very obtuse angles here. They're not square at all. They're like these really squished like parallelograms. You have problems with deformations, like running a crease. Try running a crease going from here to here, for example, here. You can't do it because of the way the isoparms are. And it was always just kind of balancing that issue. And sometimes it didn't work very well. So we'll hide that now. And now here is the Maya hand that we subsequently used in the production. So here we have, for the palm, 5 surfaces, and for the fingers, just each cylinders, for example. So I'll take the cylinders and I'll show them in its sort of reduced form. That's what we started with, just kind of primitives that were cylinders, right? And then the hand is in 5 pieces now. So like the palm, for example, was just a primitive that was a plane like so. And same with all of the rest of these things. So that's that's topologically what we started with for the hand. And then it was a matter, again, of like loading in a sketch of a hand or a photograph of a hand and drawing on that photograph, where you wanted the edges to be, and then going in and then just, using CVs and lattices and pulling CVs and moving lattices in order to get, something like this. So the reason that I could do this in Maya was, again, once again, I'm using stitch in order to stitch all those surfaces together, where here I use this as the master, all of these are the slaves, and then I do a master slave all around this in order to stitch the hand together to get something that, more or less looks like that. Okay, once that's done, then it's a matter of trimming some of these surfaces. 2 of the surfaces here, this one and this one, meet up with the fingers or the thumb. Right, this one right here, I'll go in and trim with the trimming tool. Okay, go in and which part of the surface do you want to keep? I want to keep this part of the surface, thank you. And it trims it out like so. Okay, once I do that, then, in the CGW article, I made use of multi-fillets or, blend surfaces. Here they're called fillet blends, and you get them through the fillet blend tool down at the bottom here. Okay, so I'll just do a couple of these to give you a sense of how that's done. So fillet blend tool puts you into this tool mode. You got this nice little cross here. You pick surface, you pick edge 1, enter, and then you pick edge 2, enter, and it doesn't work because I picked the wrong edge. But I'll undo that, go into the wireframe mode. As I said, that's one of the sort of nuances of dealing in shaded mode. Once again, go to fillet blend tool and pick surface 1, enter, surface 2, enter, and you get this nice blend. You stay in the tool by going to Y, right? Surface 1, enter, surface 2, enter, and you get another blend, and so on. You go all the way down the the finger that way, do the thumb in more or less the same way, and you get pretty much a topologically seamless hand when you do that. And that's what worked quite well in modeling Dave's hand there. Okay, so that describes more or less a lot of the organic modeling approaches that we were taking in Bingo. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'll pick some of the hair surface, and I'll just cycle through. You see, just these big slabs of hair, right? Some of which are modeled just sort of ribbony kind of fashion, and some of which are somewhat larger, just flat slabs. Okay, what Duncan and this other guy, Mark Forbes, were doing were creating just basic shapes for what how the hair should look and behave. Okay. So once that was in place, then you would just have these slabs of hair that you see here. And what Duncan did at that point was to create these, as I said, he would paint these textures, which would then become the textures ruling the anisotropic shader. So you'll get that. I'm not going to really show you too much of the interface there because it's going to differ somewhat, in fact, quite a bit from the plugin that Duncan did. But basically, the notion for how you get that hair look is you're using transparency maps. You're just painting them in a normal way, very solid at the root of the hair, very transparent and very kind of like frayed and tattery at the end, so that you get random-looking hair shafts. And then the anisotropic shader is used to get the sort of skinny reflections that you saw in some of the stills that I showed earlier. Okay, now go through a gear switch from that to the skeletal setup. Okay, any questions at this point about the modeling?
Yeah, when you, just in terms of the Philip legend and the fingers, would you just then include them as part of this, just normally part of the skeleton with like lattices or something, as opposed to having them rebuilt from the history like the old style?
The history rebuilds anyway. In fact, I mean, that's the whole notion of Maya, is that everything rebuilds if you have history on it, which in Maya it's very easy to do. Everything rebuilds every time you animate or do a view frame somewhere or move your model or something. Everything gets rebuilt. That's one of the really distinguishing aspects of Maya. So with the blend surfaces, we could either keep them like in Power Animate, they were just off to the side of like, you don't bind them to the skeleton, you never do that. But you can parent them with the geometry. If you parent them with the geometry, sometimes you have to go into a new option. I'll show you it very quickly. The new option is you go into the attribute editor and you can go into this thing over here where it says inherits transforms, right? Have you seen that before? Yeah. You turn that off and it will stay where it is and rebuild properly without it being carried along and getting double transformed by the transformation in the geometry, which is often a problem. Okay, question over there?
When you did the face, you did a scale of -1 and x. Was there any problem in stitching the topology after that? Or is that how you did it?
Sorry, could you say that again?
You did a scale -1 and x to get half the face to go to the other side. Is that correct?
Yep. I would freeze transforms on that, but that's besides the point. No, if you do a scaling of -1 and x, it has no adverse effect. It treats it as though it were geometry that had no scale in it at all. Okay? Yes. I can't see very well.
Why would you choose to use the blend surfaces between the fingers and the palms instead of stitch?
Because the topology there. You have these 5 cylinders here, right? And you have this long slab-like thing here, which is the palm, this thing here, right? How do you match those up? You can't. With stitch, you have to pick the edge of a surface in order to line it up. It would be nice if you were able to stitch just from, say, these are curves on surface. That's what makes it trimmed. It would be nice to stitch from a curve on surface to a piece of geometry. You happen to not be able to do that in Maya 1.0, and that's why we use blend surfaces. Okay, so I'm going to, unless there are any other questions at this point, we're getting kind of, okay, back there.
Yeah, you mentioned that when you did the page, you kind of ordered it how you wanted the page to work.
Yeah.
But was there any methodology in terms of how you broke it up?
The methodology was, it's kind of hard to I mean, it's a good question. It's kind of hard to explain that. Like as I was saying, there are general rules that I was following. Like the eye surface should go around the eye. The mouth surface should go around the mouth because that's just the way that that kind of geometry behaves. It behaves in a round orbital kind of way. Then it just kind of followed. Actually, I mean, it started from the mouth and the eyes, right? That sort of dictated how the faces should be broken up. And then at that point, it was a matter of just kind of feeling out where the lines were. And like the face has, I mean, the cheek of the face has one logical edge that would go here because you got a nice fold there, right? And it followed that the other should just come down the cheek. It was just a matter of feeling it out, really. It's not like there was some right way of doing it. I'm sure there are other ways, perhaps even better than that, for doing it, but that worked for us. Okay, I'm gonna move on right now, back to this little girl geometry right here. I'm gonna just show the skeleton for a second, just kind of show how this was built up. Okay, we have, start with the arm. We have a shoulder, wrist, and shoulder, elbow, and wrist right there. One thing that I'll explain to you a little bit later is why we have two arms on top of each other. That's the way we start right now. But just for now, very simple 3-joint skeleton for the arm, right? Okay, in addition, we have this thing, clavicle here, and I'll show you how this is controlled. We've got the shoulder picked right here, and we've got the usual sort of controls. First of all, I want to do a little hiding here of geometry. I'm going to hide the high-resolution geometry and bring in the low-resolution geometry. Okay, there's the low-res stuff. So yeah, what we did to start off with was we took the model that we had for the geometry, we broke it into these little sections, these little calamari sections, and then parented them to the skeleton in order to get, a low-res version that would move and rotate and animate quickly, like so. Okay, so there we have the shoulder picked as I had before. I can go in and rotate the shoulder in X, that is along the X-axis, that makes the shoulder rotate, Z, which makes it move down, and Y, which makes it go forward, like so. Okay, that's 3 degrees of freedom. It is a ball joint, a humeral joint. In addition, we have controls for, I'll show you again, the clavicle. Clavicle is the parent joint here, and it has an X and Y rotation that we use. But we don't go into the clavicle, we don't pick the clavicle and try to X, Y, or Z rotate it. Instead, what we do is a connect adder of the clavicle's X and Y, or Y and Z rotation. We connect adder to new dynamic attributes that we put onto the shoulder. How many of you have used dynamic attributes? Okay, not many of you. I'll do a dynamic attribute really, really quickly here. I've picked the shoulder here, right? Go into modify, add attribute, and I go say XXXX, okay? I now, when I do okay, I have a new attribute here called XXXXX, right? That's now something that I can control. It doesn't do anything right now. It's just this blank kind of control that I've put onto this shoulder. It is a dynamic attribute, which means that I can put it there, I can take it away as I want, and I can connect things to it. That's the important thing. That's what these two things are above it. You can't read it very well there, but that says shrug, and that says huddle. I created those in exactly the same way I created that XXXX thing right there, right? Let me undo that. And then what I did was I connect through the connection window, made the Z rotation of that clavicle joint dependent on this attribute shrug. So look, I've picked shrug right there, and I move it up and down, and notice that the parent joint above that shoulder joint is the thing that's moving, right? That's one of the real powerful things about Maya, is that you can connect anything to anything else. You can create these attributes wherever you want to, whenever you want to, and just create these arbitrary set of rules. In this case, they show up in the channel box, and you have this great control panel that you can then control the shoulder. Here I'm doing this huddle. That's what you do here. And that's what I have going with that particular control. The wrist, or the shoulder, the elbow has 1 degree of freedom. You just see it here with rotate Y, and it just makes the shoulder or the elbow do like so, okay? The wrist is a little bit more interesting. There's the wrist, it's picked. I can do this X, Y, and Z rotation. X, Y, Z, rotation, okay? Set them back to 0. But in addition, I've created these dynamic attributes to control the fingers. So I have some rotation on the fingers that make them do very human-like things, and then I connect them to these attributes that I just put and you see on the channel box. For example, I have this one called little clench, right? And it just, well, that's hidden, so I'll pick index clench instead and move that in. Those of you who saw the demo saw Daniel and Premiere, so I can pick several of these at the same time and move them, and so you get, something like that. I don't know how many times they were doing that kind of thing. But what I'm... So, I mean, there you get an idea of how you were able to set up this control panel by just selecting one thing. This is a really important thing to stress here as far as getting animation done quickly with Maya, which is that you can select one object, only one object here, and you can control other things happening on other objects from that one object's control panel in the channel box, right? So I'm picking all of the fingers now and setting their values to 0 so that they're unclenched again. I can pick all of them at the same time and clench them, as you see there. Really nice to be able to set keyframes like so. I've got this other attribute for spreading the fingers apart, which you see there. And those are pretty much the attributes that I was mostly using. I did a little bit of tweaking on the fingers, but not that much. I had pretty much what you see here, this control panel being used all the time for a lot of what turned out to be some fairly complex hand motions. Okay, we'll move down now to the feet area here. Okay, this is a little bit, it's going to be a little bit more involved with the discussion here. I'm going to hide some of the geometry. Okay, the feet. The feet, excuse me? Yeah, I'll get to that a little later as to what that's about, okay? So what I showed you there was an example of forward kinematics, okay, where I'm just, posing the character by rotating the shoulder, then rotating the elbow, and then rotating the wrist, and then applying some controls to the fingers. A couple of our animators, I mean, this is a matter of religion in a lot of ways. A couple of our animators just relied completely on forward kinematics for doing the arm motions. That's the way they liked to work, and that's the way that we had the little girl set up right here. I myself like to use inverse kinematics for even like for most of the arm motions, even when there's not like constraints or anything like that. So I would often just put handles on and do my own animation, and then like pass it off to Dave and take the handles off, and he would just do forward kinematics. I'm going to get to a more complex example of inverse kinematics here. For those of you who do walk cycles or have done walk cycles with characters, you have to worry about the feet planting properly on the floor. How many of you have heard the idea of like what are called reverse feet? Does that ring a bell? Okay, good, a few of you. Okay, reverse feet, I'll show an example of that. This already has some animation on it. I'll sort of bring it through there. Go to a front view. Okay, so what you'll see here is the character is just kind of moving along, the pelvis moving along. The feet aren't doing anything very meaningful at all. But you see this green and blue thing, right? Those are reverse feet, and those have already been animated to do a walk, right? Let's bring it back here. So what you want to do is to control legs through reverse feet. That is, you put a handle, an IK handle going from the pelvis to the ankle, right? So you pick up the ankle and you can do this kind of thing with it. But you also want to have a handle going from, say, the ankle to the ball of the foot, the metatarsal, so that you can do something like this, right? And then you put one from the ball of the foot to the toe so that you can get sort of articulation like that. The way that you can control that nicely with a walk is with a reverse foot. And here we have the perspective view here. So there's our reverse foot right there. What a reverse foot does is it mimics what the character's foot does. There's the ankle, the metatarsal, and the toe. Here we have the ankle, right, metatarsal and toe right there. Does that look clear enough? Okay, but it's in the reverse order. Here it's like that's the parent of that, which is the parent of that. Here we have a situation where the toe, there, the toe is the parent of the ball, which is the parent of the ankle, so that's why it's a reverse foot. right? It's in that way that you can control foot rotations nice and easily. So I'll show an example of how you set up IK handles for doing feet with Maya. I'll bring you through it just nice and quickly here. Take the knees and you rotate them somewhat, right? Go up here and you set a preferred angle. Setting a preferred angle right here tells the IK solver that the knees should flex more or less in the way that you've got it here, which is that they should flex forward. That's the way that I set the preferred angle, right? Okay, tell you what, I'm going to hide these things to get them out of the way for now. There we go, those are out of the way. So I've set a preferred angle on the leg. I'm going to bring this down to get it out of the way. And now I'm going to put an IK handle onto the leg. So I do that through skeletons, IK handle tool, pick the parent joint here, pick the child joint right there, and you get an IK handle. Okay, that's cool. You can take that IK handle and move it around, and you've got some control over that one portion of the foot. Okay, going to create another IK handle going from, I'll go to previous tool, the Y key, go IK handle from the parent here to the child here, the metatarsal, the toe, the ball of the foot. And I get a second IK handle that I can then move around to control that portion of the toe. Go back to Y, previous tool, IK handle, pick that parent, this is a child, and you get your third IK handle. Okay, so far, for those of you who've worked with Power Animator, that's the way that you start to get the IK going for this foot, okay? What you would then do is to constrain each of these to each of the nodes of the parent foot. I'm going to show you the technique which I did, which is not constraining but parenting the IK handles. Now, IK handles in Power Animator were not objects of themselves. You couldn't really select them on their own, or you couldn't select them as objects like in the hypergraph or the ASBD as it was called. Here they're nodes in and of themselves. I'll show you them. Don't want to scare you off too much with hypergraph views. I don't tend to like to show these too much. But there you have these things as objects, right? Little nodes in and of themselves, right? What I want to be able to do is to parent them, something you could not do in Power Animator, to parent these to parts of the reverse foot. I've picked that toe IK handle. I want to pick this toe thing here, the toe of the reverse foot, and to go ahead and parent that on. Doesn't do anything, but you'll see how that has the right effect later. I'm going to pick this IK handle. I'm going to pick this joint, and I'll do the same sort of parenting operation right there. And now I'm going to, this is the important thing here, I'm going to, now that I've parented them, I could take these transforms over here and set them to 0, and they're sort of on the foot there. If I were to pick this thing and move it in the right place, you'd see that they stick to the foot nicely right there. Now I'm going to take the third IK handle and parent it to this toe joint right here. Once again, do a little parent, set these values to 0, and it's nice and splorted on right now. So now when I take this foot and move it around and bring back the geometry, you'll see that the foot stays nice and planted onto that reverse foot, which is a really nice thing. Now that I've done that, I can take the pelvis, say, and move it around, and you see that the foot stays nice and planted. Okay. So now I'll go ahead and just bring this through the walk cycle, and you'll see that it walks nicely. I've hidden the other leg, and that's why you don't see it. And that's how we were able to bring this girl through her walk cycle there. Okay. So now I'm going to switch gears yet again. Now I'm going to get into some things that I suppose are going to be fairly complex. They're going to show more or less the depth of Maya rather than perhaps the, like, doing deformers in Maya is a very easy thing in the default sense. Like, you can take a skin, you can take say some geometry here, you pick a skeleton, you do bind skin, right? And if you do that for an entire geometry, you can in 1 or 2 passes get, fairly passable geometry, or fairly passable deformations, some bind skin behavior. What I'm going to show you now, though, is some pretty advanced bind skin stuff, but I just want to give you a sense of how the deformations in Bingo on this character were able to be done. So what I'm going to do now is hide the low resolution geometry and bring back bring back the final geometry. So I'm going to emphasize once again that what you're looking at here is not a stripped down demo version of what we might have used in Bingo, but we made it simple for you to look at. This is the actual model we used with warts and everything. So I'll center on this right now. Okay, so I'll move around here. So this is high resolution geometry we're looking at. This is the thing that, excuse me, this is the thing that, that has all of the deformations. And I want to just show you something here which I found very delightful, which is that in spite of this being loaded with all sorts of deformations and stuff, this was the kind of interactive performance I was getting. Okay, if I hide the hair, I'll show you a little bit more in detail what's going on there. Okay, I'll bring in a few textures to make it look a little bit prettier. Okay, so a lot's going on when I'm rotating that shoulder, and you'll see it here. When I rotate that shoulder, notice that the bib, that sort of vest thing she's wearing, is going up to stay out of the way of the arm. It breaks apart there, but she never lifts her arm up that high. So it comes down here, and now it sort of stays put because it's a separate piece of fabric from the rest of the cloth. So we're getting some really nice complex shoulder motion. Lots of deformers are going off simultaneously here. There's a blend shape going off there. But the thing that, I'm looking at a solid shaded view. Actually, I can make that even higher performance by going into a rough shaded. Now it's like almost interactive right there. So it's like lots of deformations going on, really fast performance. I'm just like, it just made us really, really happy that we could do stuff like that. So what's going on here? I'll show you a few of the deformations that we decided to do for making this thing go nice and fast. Show you some lattices. The approach that we took in Bingo, for the most part, was extremely, as far as deformations go, was extremely lattice intensive as opposed to using clusters. Clusters are, they're the one and only tool in Power Animator for use, but with lattices, we're able to do this really intricate kind of deformation type stuff. And lattices are just designed in Maya to be really, really fast. That's why you get the kind of performance that I'm showing here. So just very quickly, we have a lattice for the forearm, we have a lattice for the elbow, lattice for the upper arm. We have various lattices for the upper body. We have one that controls the vest, that bib thing that I was pointing out. We have two sets of lattices that control the lower portion of her dress, or that is like around her belly, and then one around her shoulders up here on either side. So just a whole mess of lattices right there. And I'll just show a couple in the arm before without getting into too much frightening detail there. So I'm going to hide a few of these lattices that I'm not going to show right now. Okay, so let's look at the arm right here. And in particular, let's look at what happens when you rotate the wrist. Now, there's always a lot of problems with ball joints, particularly in shoulders and in wrists. A wrist is, just anatomically here, a wrist is not a ball joint. It is, a ball joint has 3 degrees of freedom, like X, Y, and Z, right? A wrist does, I'll call it X, Y, and Z, okay, for terminology here. What's actually happening when you do that is that the wrist moves tightly. It moves as a joint when you do Z or if you do Y. But a wrist really does not have that 3rd degree of freedom. It does not rotate about its axis. What's actually happening with the wrist is that there's a rotation of 2 bones going from the shoulder, from the elbow, the ulna and the radial bones. They sort of twist around each other. Now, when you normally do deformations with a just your deformation type package, you would, think to maybe put a lattice here or a cluster or whatever here, so that when you do this, you get a nice tight deformation of the skin. You get a wrinkle there and a bulge here, right? And when you do this, you would have the same sort of tight deformations that just are just in this area. But when you do this, you're not doing that. You're not getting a tight, you don't see, when you do that, you don't see your hand just kind of twist like a wringing washcloth or whatever, just in this tight area. What you see is that there's a gradual prorated twisting of the skin all the way up the arm in a gradual way. It's a very loose deformation as opposed to that, which is a very tight deformation in here, right? So what we did here is we rotate this thing in Z. If you remember, that's what this flapping kind of thing is. And you see it's a nice tight deformation. And we rotate this thing in Y, and we also get that nice tight deformation. But watch what happens when we rotate it in X. Okay, I'm going to do that very slowly. Notice that that lattice in the forearm, that's the lattice that's moving, not anything tightly in the wrist. So we're getting that nice prorated twisting there. And that's why I have, just to kind of put this in context here, that's why I have two skeletons for the arm. So I'll hide the geometry, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to pick this up a little bit. I'm going to hide the lattices. I'm going to just take them out of the way for now. Okay? So there are the two joints. I've done this nice, okay, look closely here, and you'll see that you've got where the selected joints are shoulder, elbow, and wrist here. Let's look closely here on the actual joints. These are the joints that are used to actually carry the skin geometry. You have shoulder, you have this thing called a bicep joint, which doesn't exist anatomically, but we've put it there. We have an elbow, we have what I call an ulna joint, and then we have a wrist joint, okay? What we're doing here is this sort of trick up our sleeves, as it were, of taking this joint, which is the joint that we're just doing the animation on, and say we're rotating that Y joint. Let's come in really closely here, and let's rotate that thing in Y. When we do that, notice that not only the upper joint, but the lower joint is rotating about the wrist, right? That's because we've connected, you can do that through set-driven key or through the connection window. We've connected the X rotation of that lower joint with the X rotation, or I'm sorry, the Y rotation of the lower joint with the Y rotation of the upper joint, right? Same with the Z rotation, like so. Okay, but the X rotation, I'll pick that right now and start rotating that. And notice that it's not the wrist joint, but this joint over here, that's the one that's moving, okay? So what we're doing here is we have two joints. You don't really see them when you animate it, but that's what's controlling the deformed geometry. And what that allows us to do is pretty cool, which is to be able to take one deformer for the wrist joint and make it really small, like a small lattice just about the wrist, so you get the tight deformations. And then with the X rotation, you put a large lattice onto that other joint. That's that forearm lattice that you saw here, right? So that lattice doesn't do anything when you do this or this. It's only when you take the X rotation and you're moving that other joint, not the wrist joint, but that ulna joint, that you're able to get that nice, that other sort of deformation. That's the same thing that we do with the shoulder, by the way. Once again, I'll rotate this thing in Z, and you see the nice tight deformation in the shoulder when you do that, which is what you get. But when you do that rotation in X, notice that the whole arm is twisting, right? The whole upper arm is twisting, which is what happens anatomically. Okay? So that's basically how we wired up the rest of the deformations of the character with lots of lattices, as I say. The dress is an exception. I'll show that a little bit later if we have time. But I want to move on quickly to facial animation. Okay? So we'll get rid of, let's see, we'll keep that there. We'll get rid of this. And we'll go to my file, face blend here. Okay, Daniel brought you through a lot of this stuff if you've seen the floor demo. And what he was showing was pretty accurate of what, the approach that we took here. Okay, so I'm loading in the face. Okay, so we have, what Daniel showed on the floor was this one big face surrounded by a bunch of, littler faces. So now we're getting into the idea of face targets and using blend shape for facial animation. So I've divided here the target faces. There are 17 target faces in total. Divided them into 3 rows. All of these correspond to muscle poses. A lot of you, I'm guessing, saw, I'll ask again, I did an article about facial animation in CGW, about how to model and animate facial muscle poses. How many of you have seen that? Okay, good, a fair amount of you. Very similar approach in Maya. We have these extra tools using set-driven key that make life a little bit easier. In Power Animator, of course, you have to go into sound sync, and then you have to deal with the separate package. No, you don't have to do any of that in Maya because the performance is so good and the tools are already there. We do everything, in the package. So there's the big face, lots of little faces. Target shapes here are, on the bottom, 6 poses that control the speech of a face, right? The jaw opening and shutting is the first one right here. The jaw sliding back and forth is the second one. The lower lip going down like that is the third one. The lips pursing, like in an U shape, is the fourth one. The lower lip, or the upper lip coming down like that is the fifth one. And the lower lip coming up like that is the sixth one. So 6 speech shapes, right? Next row are shapes muscles that control the mouth but are not necessarily used for speech. First one is like a snarl, call it a sneer, like an Elvis kind of sneer, right? Actually, I'd like to bring you through some of these hold on a second. Actually, I got a nice little script there for getting that going. Okay, so once again, I'll show you open jaw, jaw opens. Jaw slide brings the jaw forward, okay? Lower lip, purser, upper lip tightening, lower lip tightening. Those are the 6 faces I showed you on the bottom. Here's the sneer, sneer left, right? Sneer right, 2 separate muscles there. Wince muscle, which is a similar one, but brings the nose up in a more tight kind of way like that. Okay, left smirk brings, it's a zygomatic major muscle, brings up the corner of the mouth like that. And of course, when you use both muscles, not just one, you have a nice smile. So that's what you have going right there. Set those both back to 0. Next muscle here is what's called the platysma muscle. I call it grimace for doing that kind of thing. And then, so those are the 6 muscles that we use for facial expressions in the mouth that aren't like speech type things. And finally, the upper row here are 5 expressions for controlling the eyes in the area around the brow. You have furrow here, there. You have the frontalis muscle, like when you bring your face up, when you bring your face up like that, in surprise, say, that's what you use. Medial frontalis, when you do this kind of thing, like you're sad or you're fearful, you often use that muscle right there. Okay, and then squint muscles, squint left and squint right. So those are all the muscles that we had for the face. So one of the things that I was like kind of evangelizing when I wrote that CGW article was that it's like the periodic table of the elements. You have 100 elements in your periodic table, but of those 100 elements, you can come up with an infinite number of molecules, right? The analogy applies here. You have a small number, the limited, the table of facial muscles. In this case, I only have 17 of them. But with those muscles, I can create an infinite amount of expressions and mouth positions and phonemes. So that's why I like using a facial muscle model for facial animation. So I'll show you how. I mean, the downside of that, unless you set it up, as I'm going to show you, the downside of that is that you are controlling things on such a low level that makes it nearly impossible to animate. Like, for example, imagine that you want to make an F sound, like that. When you do F, you're doing like at least 4 or 5 different muscles at the same time. First, you're opening your jaw slightly. Second, you're bringing your lower lip up with that lower lip muscle, right? Third, you're bringing your jaw a little bit forward. Fourth, when you're really enunciating, you bring your upper lip up like that. So that's at least 4 muscle actions that you're using. Imagine if you were doing lip syncing and had to do that for every single consonant or vowel that the character is making, you'd die. So this is what we do for upper level, high level control of the character in Maya. Okay, what I did was I created a locator node, just a primitive, going into primitive create locator, and I got this nice little thing right there, right? Onto that nice little thing, I added several dynamic attributes, and I named this little locator, I call it phonemes, right? Onto this phoneme locator, I went into add, modify, add attribute, and I created all these dynamic attributes. S, F, GK, DT, BMP, SH, TH, I, O, and U. So those are the phonemes that are used in the characters in Bingo, right? Then I used a lot of set-driven key to take those muscle poses and to make them work all together in a nice way that you could create a phoneme. And I'm going to bring you through one of these, but first I'll show you some of these muscle poses. S, right? Here's F, the one I told you about before. GK, ga, and ka, which are more or less similar. Da, which is similar to G and K, but the tongue is in a different position. B or M or P, where you have the lower lip coming up and the upper lip coming down and the jaw opening all at the same time. You have SH, which is what I'm about to show you. Th, which is where the tongue comes forward. Ah, which is pretty simple. A, which is like ah, but the tongue's in a different position. E, which is more of a stretching of the mouth. O, and oo. Okay? So the one that I did not have done of all those was the SH one. Nothing's happening there now. The reason that nothing's happening there now is that I'm going to show you how I got it to happen. Okay? Set-driven key, like it's your best friend in Maya. It's really, really cool for a number of different reasons. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the blend shape node, which I could either have selected and show in the channel box, or I bring up through the blend shape editor there. It's this one right here, what I call BG, Balloon Girl face muscles. So those are all the facial muscles that I did with blend shape. Okay, so I have that selected right now. Then I take this, go to keys, right? Set-driven key, set option box, and I get this nice little panel here. Okay, look in the bottom. I have BG face muscles. I have that as the driven node. Okay, look in the top here. I have a choice of these three things here: speech tweak or phonemes here. Phonemes happens to be the thing that I have here that I've hooked up to the other nodes, and that's why it shows up there. So I'm going to pick that, right? So I just picked phonemes 1, and I've got here these attributes, S, F, G, K, D, T, all these, which correspond one for one to all of these things here, right? Okay, I have down here, remember, BG face muscles, which have all of the low-level muscles of the face. What I'm going to do is create that SH phoneme like right on the fly right now. Here's what I do. Select SH up here, right? I select open jaw, jaw slide, lower lip, pursor, lip tight upper, lip tight lower. Remember, those were the 6 facial speech muscles that I mentioned. So I have all those selected down there, okay? I do key. Now, I go back to the phonemes, and I set SH to 1, okay? What do you do when you do an SH? First of all, you, let's see, I'll go to select the blend shape node again. So what you do when you do an SH, first of all, is that you open your jaw somewhat. So I'll do that here, right? Jaw's open, maybe not that much, maybe a little bit less. Okay, you slide your jaw forward. You know, when you go shh, you want to bring your lower teeth to meet your upper teeth. So I'll slide the jaw forward like that, right? When you do SH, you bring your lower lip down quite a bit like that, right? You use your pursor muscle a lot, right there. Say right there, okay? You use the muscles in the upper and lower part of your lip, but you use them in reverse, so I'm going to enter a, say, negative value for those guys. And there you go. Does she look like she's saying SH, more or less? Okay, I might make the pursor a little bit less, like that. So you're doing all this kind of refinement here. It's a very, very much of a tweaking operation at this point, just so that you get it to look like you want it to look like. Once you get it to the point where you think it looks all right, here I'm going to close her jaw off a little bit more, right? Once you get satisfied with the phoneme or the expression, then you go back down here and you do key, right? Let's go back and pick that phoneme locator that I picked there. And now we'll take that SH and we'll go back to a neutral pose because we brought that to 0, and we'll bring it back up. So now she can do SH. That's exactly how I did all the other phonemes that you have there. Okay? So now that she has all this facial, ability to do facial stuff, let's see, I'll get rid of these targets here. Get them out of the way. So I'll read in a sound file very quickly. There it is. Let's see, I'll set animation options to normal. Good. So now she's saying,
Hi. Hi, Bingo. But I'm not Bingo.
okay.
He's coming, you know.
So
He's coming.
what you see there is that there's this chunky chunk, which is because we have a lot of geometry showing, and we're showing it at high resolution. I have a nice hotkey for showing that in low resolution. One of the things that I like making hotkeys for various things. You see that's in low resolution right there now. And now what I'm going to do is I have these things in various layers. So I'm going to, say, pick a layer, like, say, I have this stuff. I've taken all the geometry that's not important for speech, and I've put it into a layer, and then I can hide that layer. So now I'm just left with the mouth area. When it's in this kind of state, then things tend to operate a lot more faster and interactively.
Hi, Bingo. But I'm not Bingo.
He's coming, you know.
Okay, so I'll come and
He's
I'll
coming?
check in. I'll come in a little bit closer on part of that right there, just where she says hi, Bingo. So now we'll try it again.
Hi, Bingo. But I'm not.
Okay, so look here, and you see, if you look closely in the bottom, you see all these ticks here. That's the animation that I did with using this, using that phoneme node. So I'll go and actually take out a few of these keyframes right in there, right? I'll delete them. So once again, we'll start.
Hi, Bingo. But I'm not.
Okay. One thing that I have here, I haven't pointed out here, is I have this other thing for doing tweaks on the muscles. So in case I want to do some really low-level stuff, I can do that easily enough.
But
I won't get too much into that now because it is, it's some detail that, it's nice and deep, but I want to show you just some basic stuff here. And this gets pretty much the point across as to what's done. So I'm going to do hi, Bingo here. Come in a little bit closer on hi, Bingo. Going to bring in the option box here, and I'm going to make the time slider much higher so you can see that waveform a little bit more. So now she's saying,
Hi, Bingo. But I'm not.
Okay, so right in here, that's hi, Bingo. Right in there, those 3 peaks, hi, Bingo. What I'm going to do really quickly is just animate that portion right there. So right there is where she would be saying hi, Bingo, or ha. So I'll take that and set a keyframe for that. What I do is I just select all of these things in the channel box. I have a hotkey for setting a keyframe, just my K key. So I believe that S or Control S is what the default is. So hotkey, I've set a keyframe. You see, if you look closely, there's a nice red kind of slash there. I'll go to where she goes, ha. So at that point, her mouth is open all the way. So I'll go, say, I'll put in a higher value for here. Okay? And once again, I'll set a keyframe here. See, I'll go back to this because I want to say, cut the animation here. No, I'm just going to set this to 0. Set a keyframe there. Okay, back to where we were. So anyway, she's going hi, B. Right there is the B. So go ahead and set that to 1 here, and set this to 0 here. So now she's doing a kind of a ba here. Let's see, it's a little bit too much, so I will make it a little bit less, like say like there. Once again, pick all these, set a keyframe. Hi, Bing, right there, I for Bingo. Set these to 0, set this to 0, set this to say 0.6 or so, right? So now she's saying I. Go through these, set a keyframe. So hi, Bing. Okay, right here, Bingo. one thing about phonemes is that you don't want to use all of the phonemes. You want to use just the important ones. So I have, like, ha, the hi is one. The way she says hi bingo is the way that a person would say ha binga, right? So I'm only using a few phonemes and a few, just the crucial positions. So that makes the note motion more or less fluid here. Up to this point, I'm going to put, she's going to say hi big go, and that's hi bingo, but it looks like hi bingo. So right here, in this little trough here, is where she's going ga. So I'll set all these back to 0 again, and I'll take that ga phoneme, and I'll set it up to some intermediate point right there. Select all these, set a keyframe, bingo. Right here is where she's saying ah. So I set these to 0. Set the ah phoneme up a little bit higher right there, and select all these, set a keyframe, and then right here at the end she's got her mouth shut again. Okay? Select all these, set a keyframe. So now she's going
Hi, bingo.
But I'm not.
So that's lip sync in a nutshell right there. Once again, great performance there. And like one of the things about having to go to sound sync was that it had its own special tessellation that made it go fast, that Power Animator would just be painfully slow. Things just crank in Maya. They're just so fast doing stuff like this. As you see, it is interactive. Okay, what time are we at right now? We're at about 6. That is actually a fairly good stopping point. That really gives you a sense of a very big chunk of how we did character animation in this package. So thanks a lot. If you have any questions, stick around. In fact, I can take questions right now. Those of you who want to leave, just go ahead and leave.